Hey nerds, let's make some lampshades. I got the idea for these from the VR game Walkabout Mini Golf, which is awesome, and specifically the downloadable extra content level Alfheim, which is super awesome. Highly recommended the whole experience. I hadn't done tons of nice finish paper and PVA glue sculpting, but like all people who were ever children, I'd done some very rough finish paper and PVA sculpting. And it's basically the same, just with a bit more forethought and care. So I grabbed some party balloons and some cheap 3-ply tissues, which I de-plied into a big stack of 1-ply tissues, mixed up a bowl of runny PVA, and away we go. It helps to paint a bit of the glue stuff straight on the balloon to start, and then just layer on single plies of tissue in random manner, gently patting the glue on to saturate the paper, not rubbing too much because it's pretty delicate stuff when it's wet. I was aiming to cover the balloon evenly with enough tissue to be self-supporting when dry, but not enough to block the light much. I think I used about 4 tissues per balloon, maybe 5 or 6. It probably varies according to tissue brand anyway. Just aim for enough, but not too much. That's usually a winning formula. I pushed the bits around the collar of the bulbous shape into a sort of ridge for extra stability, leaving a hole big enough to be able to get this whole shape over a dangling light fixture, and I let them dry for 24 hours. When they were totally dry, I cut a tiny hole in the tied bit of the balloon so it would deflate slowly because I didn't want to make it collapse if the balloon stuck, which it didn't. It went fine, and it looked exactly like I hoped. Then I raided my shed for some fencing wire and cut a bunch of lengths ranging from about 25 to 35 centimeters, bundled them into 5s and twisted them into branchy, rooty-looking things. The initial twisting required pliers because fencing wire is pretty stiff, but the smaller branches I could do by hand. I just kept them looking pretty organic and didn't worry about the details, being fairly confident that I'd still be able to fine-tune it when I put them together. At this point, I experimented with sticking 3 bundles together with smaller wire in a botched plan to make a sort of finished globe-holding shape before I covered them in paper, but that was a mistake. Don't do that. It's much easier to cover them in paper in smaller units. The paper tape I like is a brown gummed packing tape. I cut it into smallish thin strips and wet it with a sponge and water setup and just wrapped it around the branches, starting at the smallest bits and working my way up, doing my best to smooth it in the places where 2 bits become 1. It had a really nice finish on its own. I had considered adding some pulped version of paper mache at the end, but I decided I didn't need that. I did, however, have to layer it at least 3 times to get even a barely reasonable thickness, so if I had it to do again, I'd probably layer some masking tape on first, I guess, to fatten it up before I put the paper tape on, but they looked good skinny too, so fuck it. Once they were all paper taped and dried, I stuck 3 of them together with paper tape across their tops so they could flexibly wrap around the hanging light cord during installation, which was a much better plan than the thin wire thing I'd tried earlier. I could just wrap this around the cord and tie it with string. Right, so I had these bundles of branch things, and I had these silkworm cocoon-looking things, and only the roughest idea of how to make it all stick together on a dangling bulb. I ended up taking a bit of old sheet and sewing a channel for a drawstring along the edge, working out how big it needed to be to stick to the inside of the silkworm cocoon's top edge, and then drawstring around the light fitting. Worrying that just gluing the fabric onto the paper might not be strong enough, I also cut some curves of cereal box cardboard to match the top curve of the cocoons and glued that over the top of the fabric skirt. From a technical perspective, that worked super well, and they were really sturdy, so I was ready to install. They don't really pass the test of being easy to get into when you need to change a light bulb, but they are possible to get into when you need to change a light bulb. And anyway, I've been promised over and over again that LED lights hardly ever need changing. I had worried a little that the skirt and cardboard bit would be very visible at the top of the light when the light was turned on and shining through it, but a job lot of used fake ivy on eBay is this project's version of stick a bow over it, nobody will notice. And if it still shows, just put more ivy on. And that absolutely worked to my satisfaction. I think they're adorable and I love everything about them. Kind of a shame about the rest of the room. I really should get around to finishing the walls and ceiling at some point, but sometimes it's okay to do the frivolous fun jobs first.